What if one port could decide a nation's survival? Imagine a landlocked country in West Africa, no coastline, no direct access to the sea. Now imagine that country's entire economy, its fuel, food, medicine, flows through a single port. That port is the port of Tema in Ghana, and the country, Burkina Faso. In just 72 hours, if Tema shut down, shelves could empty, fuel tanks would run dry, and hospitals might ration critical supplies. But here's the twist. This story isn't about crisis. It's about control. Because while most eyes are fixed on elections and military coups, a quiet shift is underway across West Africa. Not in headlines, but in shipping lanes. And that shift begins at Tema. For decades, Ghana has been the model of quiet diplomacy, the stable partner for Western allies. But recently, something has changed. With little fanfare, Ghana has begun turning north, toward the Sahel, toward nations like Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. And it's not doing so with grand speeches. It's doing so with cargo manifests, rail lines, and customs reforms. Tema, once just another dock on the Gulf of Guinea, is quietly becoming a geopolitical pivot. Today, we dive deep into the rising role of the port of Tema, how it's reshaping Sahel logistics, and why Vantai Ghana Burkina may be the most underrated power shift happening in Africa right now. Let's unpack it. To understand why Tema matters, we need to start with geography. Ghana sits on the Atlantic coast of West Africa, nestled between Côte d'Ivoire to the west and Togo to the east. Right along that coastline lies the Port of Tema, a massive deep-water facility that's grown from a national asset into a regional powerhouse. Built in the 1960s, the port has undergone multiple expansions, with the most recent adding over $1 billion in infrastructure upgrades. Today, it boasts over 20 berths, including deep-sea terminals capable of handling mega vessels with capacities exceeding 18,000 containers. But it's not just about cranes and concrete. Tema processes more than 70% of Ghana's container traffic. It connects directly to Accra by expressway and is now linked to the north through the Mpakadan rail line, nearly 100 kilometers of track already completed. This is the beginning of a high-capacity corridor extending toward Burkina Faso, with plans to reach Ouagadougou in the coming years. That matters, because this port isn't just shipping cocoa and pineapples anymore. It's moving fuel, fertilizer, medical supplies, electronics, and construction materials, essentials for survival and growth across the Sahel. Every year, hundreds of thousands of tons of goods transit through Tema headed inland, and those numbers are rising fast. Since 2022, the volume of cargo bound for landlocked countries has nearly doubled. Because Tema has become more than a dock, it's a node of power. While other ports in the region, like Abidjan or Lomé, serve similar purposes, Tema stands out for one key reason: stability. In a region plagued by coups and crises, Ghana remains calm. Its political institutions, legal framework, and relative transparency give shippers and investors confidence. And confidence is currency in global logistics. That's why international freight companies are increasingly routing their Sahel-bound cargo through Ghana. That's why rail investments are accelerating. That's why the Tema Port Ghana is no longer just Ghana's problem or Ghana's prize. It's becoming West Africa's backbone. And as you'll see in a moment, what flows through Tema doesn't just shape markets, it shapes politics. Now let's follow the route inland, northbound, straight into Burkina Faso. It's a landlocked nation wedged between Mali, Niger, and Ghana with no direct access to the sea. That geographic reality changes everything. Without a coastline, Burkina Faso relies entirely on foreign ports to move goods in and out: fuel, fertilizer, machinery, medicine. And in recent years, more and more of those goods have been flowing through one place: the port of Tema. Think about it. Every gallon of gasoline, every sack of grain, every vial of vaccine must cross hundreds of kilometers of road or rail, starting at the Ghanaian coast. The corridor from Tema to Ouagadougou is not just a transport route, it's a lifeline, and it's fragile. Burkina Faso is one of the poorest nations in the world, facing both economic hardship and growing insecurity. Its supply chains are constantly under pressure, from terrorism in the north to customs bottlenecks in the south. Tema has emerged as its most reliable gateway. Why? Because other options are becoming riskier. Ports in Côte d'Ivoire and Togo, once common alternatives, now pose longer routes, more inspections, and higher costs, especially since political tensions with Sahel countries escalated. As a result, Tema is not just a convenience, it's becoming the only viable sea door. Over the past 3 years, trade volume between Ghana and Burkina Faso has surged. In 2024 alone, over 700,000 tons of goods moved across this corridor. And it's not slowing down. Burkina's national oil company recently invested over $70 million in a fuel terminal in Tema's dock, its own stake in this lifeline. It's a move that signals not just dependence, but intention. The Vantai-Ghana-Burkina connection is now deeply entrenched, but that dependence cuts both ways. Every delay at the port, every hiccup at the border, every roadblock along the route can cripple businesses, disrupt schools, shut down hospitals. In the Sahel, margins are razor thin. A few days of holdup can mean soaring prices at the market, or a shipment of medicine that never arrives. And that's why the stakes are so high. When Tema works, life continues. When Tema fails, life stalls. So while it may seem like just another trade link on the map, to the people of Burkina Faso, it's much more. It's not just about imports, it's about survival. So far, we've looked at infrastructure and geography, but there's another layer unfolding beneath the asphalt and shipping lanes: politics. Because while Tema has grown in economic value, Ghana's leadership has begun to assign it a new role: strategic leverage. And at the heart of that shift is former president, and now, once again, sitting leader, John Dramani Mahama. When Mahama returned to office in early 2025, the signals were subtle at first. No fiery speeches, no sudden declarations. But insiders noticed a change in tone. Ghana, long known as a quiet ally of the West, began facing north, not west, toward the Sahel, toward neighbors like Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. That pivot became unmistakable when Mahama welcomed Ibrahim Traoré, the young and defiant military leader of Burkina Faso, to Accra. The two men signed agreements on energy cooperation, transport corridors, customs digitization, and border management. But it wasn't the paperwork that shook analysts in Washington and Paris. It was the symbolism. Here was Ghana, a stable democracy, reaching out to military-led regimes under sanctions and scrutiny, and doing it not with caution, but with intent. Mahama's message was clear: Africa must stand on its own feet. No more waiting for foreign aid disguised as partnership. No more economic deals that come with political strings. This wasn't a rebellion, it was a recalibration. And at the center of it was Tema. The port became the bridge, not just between countries, but between ideologies. One foot in Western-backed development, the other in regional self-reliance. In essence, Ghana was redefining neutrality. No longer just a bystander between power blocks, but an active broker. The Ghana-Burkina Faso was no longer just bilateral. It became continental. Ghana offered the Sahel access to the sea. The Sahel, in return, offered Ghana new influence, new leverage, in a part of Africa where old alliances are crumbling. It was a handshake that carried weight, a civilian president and a military revolutionary, both saying Africa doesn't need permission to cooperate. And Tema? It became the runway for that cooperation to take flight. But every shift in strategy creates a ripple. And Ghana's quiet pivot toward the Sahel has not gone unnoticed, especially by its traditional partners in the West. For decades, Ghana was the model student, a stable democracy, a recipient of Western aid, a favored ally in a region often defined by coups and crises. But with the rise of Mahama's new direction, the tone in diplomatic circles began to change. Policy memos from Western embassies became more cautious. Analysts began asking hard questions. Is Ghana still aligned with Western interests, or is it forging a new, unpredictable path? Some in Washington called it strategic ambiguity. Others were less diplomatic, labeling Ghana's outreach to the Sahel as a flirtation with instability. The concern wasn't just about politics, it was about infrastructure. Because whoever controls the ports controls the flow of influence. And Tema isn't just a dock anymore, it's a gatekeeper. Every container that leaves Ghana bound for the Sahel bypasses traditional Western-controlled logistics hubs. Every rail line laid from Tema to Ouagadougou strengthens a regional alliance outside old frameworks. The Dung Sat Ghana Sahel is now seen not only as a development project, but as a statement of independence. And that makes some Western institutions nervous. Behind closed doors, trade groups warn that Tema could become the heart of a parallel economy, one where oversight is limited and leverage is lost. Even aid agencies are watching closely, wondering if the balance of power in West Africa is shifting too fast to manage. But here's the paradox. The more criticism Ghana receives, the more support it gains from its neighbors. In Burkina Faso, in Mali, in Niger, Tema is not seen as a threat. It's seen as hope, a way to break from dependency, a way to survive without asking for permission. And to Ghanaian leaders, that shift is long overdue, because for too long, African development was treated like charity. Now it's becoming a matter of logistics. And for better or worse, Ghana is at the center of that transition. It's no longer just about diplomacy, it's about trade, about transit, about timing. And to many in the West, that change feels less like an opportunity and more like a threat. Here's a question worth asking. What if the next great battle for power in Africa isn't fought with weapons, but with warehouses? What if the new front line isn't marked by soldiers, but by shipping manifests? Because in the Sahel, war isn't just about ideology anymore. It's about infrastructure. Over the past 2 decades, 2 out of every 3 violent incidents in the Sahel have happened within walking distance of a road. That's not a coincidence. Roads are power. They carry soldiers, yes, but also fuel, food, medicine. They decide who gets supplies and who doesn't. Now apply that to Tema. When Ghana builds a secure corridor northward, it's not just moving trucks, it's redrawing the map. The Trukau Kentefi is becoming a new zone of competition. One side sees it as a tool for survival and growth, the other sees it as an escape route from oversight. And here's the truth. Both are correct. Every kilometer of rail between Tema and the Sahel is a choice to depend less on ports in countries tied to foreign influence, a choice to trust a regional partner, even if it's politically controversial, a choice to build trade routes instead of treaties. And in regions where government is fragile, logistics fill the vacuum. When a port delivers on time, it builds trust. When a convoy reaches a remote village, it prevents hunger and rebellion. So the real question is this: who will shape the future of the Sahel? Those who write policy or those who build pipelines? Because in today's Africa, sovereignty isn't declared with flags. It's delivered in containers. And Tema is loading them, one after another, quietly, efficiently, deliberately. This is no longer just transport, it's territory. And Ghana, whether it admits it or not, is laying claim. Let's take a step back. Behind the geopolitics, beyond the strategy, there are people, men and women who live on the edge of this vast logistical web. Drivers, traders, farmers, parents. For them, Tema isn't a theory, it's a thread that holds daily life together. Take the truckers who make the journey from the Port de Ouagadougou. They drive for days across hot, dusty terrain. Sometimes they stop at 10 or 15 checkpoints, each one demanding paperwork, or worse, unofficial fees. One delay, one missing stamp, and the entire shipment can sit in limbo. A week lost in customs can mean 2 months of profit gone. And for small traders in Burkina Faso, that margin is the difference between survival and collapse. In markets across the Sahel, people don't talk about supply chains. They feel them. They feel them when fuel prices spike overnight. They feel them when medicine is stuck on a truck somewhere along the corridor. They feel them when school supplies arrive too late, or not at all. The Choi Kung Ung Noi Hoi isn't just a network. It's the nervous system of entire nations. And when it malfunctions, the pain is immediate. Families postpone meals. Hospitals ration treatment. Small businesses shut their doors. Even moments of improvement come with complexity. Tema's modernization brought faster processing, but also higher expectations. Now when delays happen, the frustration is sharper, because the promise of efficiency has been made. Burkina Faso's small-scale importers say they don't want favors. They want fairness. They want goods to move at the same speed for everyone, big companies and tiny shops alike. But the reality? Corruption still clings to the edges. Extra fees, ghost charges, unclear rules that change from one checkpoint to the next. And yet, despite all that, people keep moving. Trucks keep rolling. Hope keeps driving forward on roads paved with hardship. Because Tema isn't just Ghana's port, it's their port too. And every shipment that reaches its destination is more than a delivery. It's a victory. So now we've arrived at the edge of the story in the start of a bigger question. Because the port of Tema is no longer just a dock. It's a decision. A decision about who moves goods, who sets the pace, who holds the keys to the Sahel. We've seen how Tema Port Ghana has transformed into the backbone of West African trade. We've followed the flow of Ghana-Burkina transport, carrying more than just containers, carrying trust, tension, and hope. We've watched Ghana step into a new role, not as a pawn, not as a bystander, but as a broker of balance, a bridge between the familiar grip of Western influence and the rising demand for African autonomy. It's a bold path. It offers opportunity, but also risk, because every port becomes a point of pressure. And Ghana now walks a razor's edge, one foot anchored in international investment, the other rooted in regional solidarity. If Tema falters, if corruption spreads, if politics intrude, if systems fail, the consequences won't stop at the border. They'll echo from Accra to Ouagadougou, from the Sahel to Brussels. But if Ghana holds steady, if it proves that African-led logistics can match or exceed global expectations, then Tema becomes more than a port. It becomes a proof point that sovereignty isn't granted, it's built, that independence doesn't arrive in declarations, but in deliveries, that the future of the Sahel might not be written in speeches, but in shipping lanes. So here's the question I leave you with. Who truly shapes a continent's future? The ones who write the rules, or the ones who move the goods? Let us know in the comments. Where are you watching from, and how do you see Ghana's role in the region? And if you found value in this story, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share this message. Because in Tema, Africa isn't waiting. It's already moving. Container by container, day by day, and the world is watching.